Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Jan Fiero and I'm the Communications Manager for the Innovation Lab. Today we are providing a training webinar on the Legume Resource and Reporting Hub on Piestar. The main presenters today demonstrating the Legume Resource and Reporting Hub are Tara Dean and Ryan Woodburn from Piestar. Also here to answer reporting questions are Dr. John Maitendorf, Deputy Director of the Legume Systems Innovation Lab, and David DeYoung, the Program Manager. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions, you may submit them using the Q&A feature. Please note the Q&A is different than the chat. Please submit questions as you have them. This will help us know when to stop presenting and answer your questions. If you are unable to submit a question using the Q&A feature, you may send your question by email to legumes, L-E-G-U-M-E-S, @msu.edu. This email address is also listed on your screen. Our goal is to answer all questions, and please do not wait until the end of the presentation to submit your questions. The microphones of all attendees are muted in this webinar. You may use the chat feature to communicate with panelists. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. John Maitendorf, our Deputy Director, for a few introductory remarks. John.
Thank you, Jan, and good morning, everyone. We're delighted to have you with us this morning. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be part of this. Barry sends his apologies. He can't be with us today because he's taken a personal day and is elsewhere at the moment, but he wants to make sure that you understand how important this is for us as a lab, and also how grateful he is for your willingness to participate not only in the session, but also in the reporting system that we've set up for Piestar. Piestar is an important part not only of our reporting system, but also of our monitoring and evaluation system. So I know that reporting can sometimes be tedious, and I know that we all of us sometimes get a little tired of having to frequently and persistently enter new data, but for us to be able to be accountable as a lab for the funds that we have received, and also for us to be able to highlight and emphasize the impact that we are having as a lab, this kind of reporting system is very important. So we're grateful to you for being willing to do this. We want you to know that the reason we're using Piestar is because we're looking to lower transaction costs. In other words, rather than being bombarded by repeated emails, this is intended to make the transition from your activities to our reporting easier and more consolidated. So I hope that you understand that even though this sometimes may seem like an imposition, that this is not only important to us, but we're also doing our very best to reduce the number of communications that you have to receive and make it easy for you to access this system and do your reporting in a way that not only highlights your successes, but also allows us as a lab to highlight our successes collectively. So once again, thank you for being here today. I know that some of you may not be in your mornings, but in your afternoons, but we're grateful for you, and we're thankful that you're willing to go through this session, and we hope that it's helpful for you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Piestar specialist, Tara Dean, for the training portion of the call.
Hi, everyone. I'm getting my microphone unmuted and waiting for a truck to pass outside my office, so I hope you can't hear that noise. My next step is to share my screen, and so I'm going to do that. And I think I need the John, I think you need to, or David, unshare your, thank you. Okay. All right, can everyone see my screen? I have the Legume Innovation Lab Piestar Hub open. Nobody's telling me they can't, so I'm gonna keep going. Zach Stewart, I hope you don't mind, I'm emulating you, so I'm in the system as you for demonstration purposes. The first thing, the goal of our Piestar site is to make the reporting as easy and stress-free as possible for all of you. And so I joined the team back over the summer, and one of my first thoughts was how nice it is to interface with our site. So hopefully you agree as you go through the reporting process. I'm going to talk about a few things according to what David and Jan reviewed with me yesterday, and Ryan is here to jump in and help me out if there's any area where I don't give a full enough explanation, or if there's anything that I didn't think to mention. So he'll be here jumping in as well, potentially. The first thing, I guess the demo of logging in, it's pretty straightforward. If you, so I'm going to go back to myself here real quick. If you haven't received a welcome email, reach out to David and we can get that sent to you. But you'll get an email with a link to establish a password, and it's pretty straightforward. It's basically the forgot your password link. And once you've established your password, you just click sign in and you should be directed towards the dashboard. If you have any issue with that, again, contact David, or you can reach out to Piestar support, which is support@piestar.com, and we'll respond as soon as we can. So now I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to emulate Zach again so that you can see things from a PI perspective. My interface looks different. So the first thing David wanted me to show you was your personal profile. And this is just to give information to other people who might be searching you in the system. It's not actually a module. So you will have a module called background and demographics that we'll go over when we get to the impact modules section. And you will have to fill that information out once and be done with it. But the profile is actually something different. And that is, if you go up here in the upper right-hand corner, there's a drop down that says My Profile. And here you can sort of add profile information that, again, is not a module data collection module. So I'll click the Edit Profile. You can put a photo here if you want. If you click Change and Upload a Photo, and you can add your physical address and your social media links, and then click Save. So if you want to do that, you can. It's not a requirement. I think, though, that since David wanted me to mention it, it might be good to go in and fill that out. The next is going to be project setup. You'll have a limited view of the projects as a PI, but just so that you know, if you do have a link here up in this top menu on the right for project, and if you click on it, you'll be able to see some of the sort of high level details of the projects you're assigned to. And that actually includes a new feature, which is session progress. As the people on your team report into the system, this progress tracker will start to fill up, and you'll be able to see across your project, how far am I to 100% complete in terms of all the people participating. And so as we get in the system, or as you get in the system and report, this will start to fill up. And then if you want to see who is where in the process, you can click this View Individual Progress button, and it will take you to what is called the Module Progress report. And it will give you the individual breakdown, and will also tell you the last time someone logged in. So if someone tells you, oh yeah, I was in just last week, and then you click in and it turns out they haven't logged in 3 months, you can come back to them and say, well, actually, I need you to get in the system because you have not been in last week. So if there's any sort of communication misunderstandings, you can address it that way. But this will give you that at-a-glance visual dashboard of how people are doing as far as completing their modules on your project. I'm going to go back to this project summary, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but this reporting progress, is that going to be for the individual PI?
Yeah, so that's going to be for the specific individual that is looking at this page.
Okay, so we have a team breakdown here under session progress, and an individual like yourself, your own progress will be in this lower box here. You'll also be able to see who is tied to your project. So these are going to be the personnel cards. You'll see here some of these say gone on this example, and that designation means they have no modules. So maybe they're still on another project and they still log into the system, but they don't need to be reporting to your project. So we will mark them as gone, which takes the modules for your project away. Also in this example, we have this individual here on the bottom that is listed as a co-PI. So you can see what roles people are assigned, and the roles will designate which modules they have to complete. And if you have any question about that, you would contact David and have a discussion there. As far as objectives and objective results, these are also controlled at the project level, except you as a PI will not have access to add them. But if you notice that an objective needs to be updated or added, and you'll see that in the impact modules that we'll discuss here later, then you would reach out to David and have that discussion so that they can be updated by either him or myself. And then the last thing here under project is going to be this indicators button. And this is where you can set your targets. And first off, you'll select from the dropdown which module, or sorry, which indicator you want to address. And I'll go ahead and click degree granting training. And here's where you can enter your targets. And this will tie back to the module where you enter in your actual numbers. And Ryan, do you want to jump in and add any information here just on account of your depth of knowledge about this feature?
Yeah, I think you pretty much covered it. So you'll just go in and you'll enter in your target numbers for the upcoming years. And then as we go forward, every year when you go in to complete these target numbers, you'll be able to see what you entered last year in that current year target column. And then the actual number is what we pull from the impact modules themselves, so we can compare those two. And then if those are off by 10% or more, you'll need to write a deviation narrative to go along with that.
Thank you, Ryan. So yeah, there's two pieces of the system that deal with the indicators, and this is one of them. So we'll come back to this later. And if you have any questions as you go through the reporting, you can always reach out, and we can do more explaining at that time. Okay, so this was at the level of project. And David, is there anything you wanted to add to this piece before we jump over to request modules?
No, only that we do want to capture the target numbers for the current fiscal year 2020. And so in the case of Zach's project here, which is an initial activity, he cannot adjust those target numbers, but as PIs log in for the first time, they will be able to set the target numbers for fiscal year 2020, the current fiscal year. And there will be additional custom indicators that we will be adding. And so on that drop down, this is just degree granting training. You see the technologies and short-term training. We will be adding additional, there'll be more than just those 3 indicators that we will request your target numbers for upcoming years.
Okay, very good. So that being said, we'll move on to the next section to cover, which is going to be request modules. And when we talk about data collection in the Piestar system, we're actually referring to 2 types. One is the impact module data collection that is tied to an open session. So as long as a session is open, you'll be able to click on impact modules and fill out the data collection modules. However, even when a session is not open, you will have access, you will have basically year-round access to the request modules. And those are here in this request dropdown. So if you hear us talk about a module that is open all the time, it's basically the ability to ask for something. And in the dropdowns here in the Legume site, we have international travel, in-country spending, supplies, and equipment. And before I click on any of these as an example, as to how they function, I do want to mention that on your dashboard, which was that page when we first logged in, you actually have a quick access to the international travel requests and the supply requests. And that was designated by David, and I'm assuming those are the ones you're going to want to use more often. So if you don't want to have to go up here and click the drop down and you're already on the dashboard, then you can go ahead and click these. Also, while I'm here, I'll just show you that over here in this upper left box or card, we have the total reporting progress, and this is for the individual, who in this case is Zach Stewart, who as he goes through and completes his modules, this card will update. And so if he completes his background and demographics module, this will change from a 0 to a 1, and you'll start to see progress fill up on this handy visual cue. And if he's looking at this and wants to go in and do some more reporting, he can click continue reporting, or he can come up here and click impact modules. The other cards are announcements and opportunities. This will be updated by David and his team. Also helpful links. This is the link to the actual site for your lab. And then again here, well, there's also this travel calendar, so that as travel requests are approved and they get added into the system, this will start to populate. So keep an eye out for that, and you'll see that change. And then here are these widgets. And I'm just going to point out, Zach must have been adding his photo while I was demonstrating, because he's been in here and updated that since we've started. So good job. So I'll go ahead and click on the international travel requests. And the way that this is going to function is it's something called well, you can add requests. It's a multi-module. I guess you didn't need to know that, but I mentioned it anyway. As you need to request some international travel, and in this case, Zach has already done so, you'll click this green button, and it will open a form that you can then fill out. And there's going to be some validation in these forms, which basically means if you don't fill out a required field, it's going to squawk at you, and it's going to, red is going to highlight and say you didn't fill out this field or this field. And off the top of my head, I don't know which those are going to be, but it's probably going to be most of them. But the forms they should be straightforward. If you need additional information about this, reach out to David and Jan. But the idea is to capture as much information about your request as possible. And then and I will also mention down here, there's an opportunity to upload files as attachments. So if you need to add an itinerary or a copy of the ticket, you can do it there. And then you'll click submit for approval, and this will start the workflow through the system so that the right person will get an email to approve the travel. And then once that travel, I'll go ahead and click cancel here. Once that travel is approved, and once that happens, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's when you'll be prompted to fill out a travel report for the trip, where you will add data that you couldn't have added prior to traveling, but that you will have after you have completed your travel. So the system will ask you to complete your travel report afterwards. And just as a side note, the way the Piestar system works from an email perspective is if you have not completed your trip report, you will continue to receive an email reminding you to do so. And once you do it, those will stop. And the same is true for the reporting on the impact modules. As long as your completion is less than 100%, you will still get reminders. And once you finish, those will stop. So it's pretty slick. Anyway, just to take a step back, Ryan, do you want to add anything about this, the workflow standpoint of the request?
No, you pretty much got it. The only thing I would add to clarify would be on this international travel request table. No, if you go back to the list,
right.
When you're completing the
table, I was like, oh, he means this here.
Yeah, when you're completing a travel report, you'll see that there'll be right next to that edit button, there'll be a separate button for travel report, and that's what you'll click to go to the travel report form. We see a lot of people clicking on the original travel request and getting confused, but there will be a separate button for the travel report.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to point out, is that there does tend to be some confusion around, well, I clicked on it, but it's not letting me do what I need to do. And just to add to what Ryan said, the travel report button is a white button. So once it's time, you'll see a white button over here on the right. Thank you for that.
I just wanted to add that on the screen, it mentions there, please submit your requests 3 months prior to departure. We're actually requesting 6 weeks at this point, and that's to coordinate at least the first trip, communicating with the mission, the USAID mission in the country, and it's at the request of our AOR that we begin this process where you request travel 6 weeks in advance so that we have the opportunity to plan if there's any contact with the mission. So that's one change from what's on the screen there.
Okay, so I'll have Ryan take note of that and you can get that updated so that this reflects that.
And we should also probably make clear that the request for travel is separate from your planned travel. So you'll be submitting your planned travel semi-annually or actually quarterly, and you'll also be submitting your travel request. So the travel request goes through a different approval process and is different from the travel planning. So I'm sorry for that duplication, but it's something that we're required to do.
Okay. And then just to go over some of these other request modules, there is the supplies request module, and it functions in the same way. If you have a supply or supplies that you need to request, you click on this green button and you fill out the form that shows up and you submit for approval. And again, if you miss any fields and try to submit, it will tell you what you have overlooked. And also we have equipment requests. It's going to function the same way. Suppose I can click on it to show you the form. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to go back to international travel request real quick. I want to see if there's a field I need to point out. I think it's on the travel report side of things. No, here we go. Key contacts at destination. Press add to add an entry. Sometimes people overlook this one because the add button is all the way over here. So I just wanted to emphasize that that's right there, and you'll get another form pop up that you can fill out. So if you're confused as to what you missed, it might be this key contact. So just keep that in mind. And then
Tara,
the last, yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out. I just wanted to also mention that when you click add for the person, please make sure that the institution that the person you will be visiting is included. That's one thing we've had to go back before where people have added their key contact, but not the institution. Correct, exactly, yep.
Okay. And that may not be a validated required field, so that might be why people have overlooked it. So David, if we need to look into changing that, let us know and we'll see if it's possible. I'm actually not sure if it is from this form standpoint. It might not be. But.
So one other thing under the request, there's a supplies request as well. And we wanted to point out that for those of you who will be using inputs such as fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, seed purchases, etc., that those have to go through that supplies request. And this is a liability issue for USAID, so it's very important that we get those permissions and approvals from USAID before you make the purchase. So as you're going into your projects and you're anticipating activities, make sure that those supplies requests are filled out in a timely fashion. The approvals usually only take a couple of days once we get them to USAID, but sometimes getting all the information that we need in order to submit this properly to USAID can take more time than that. So please make sure you get those supplies, those input requests in a timely fashion so that we can process them and so that your activities aren't delayed.
Okay. Thank you both for jumping in with additional details that I could not have provided. Okay, so the second to last request I'm going to talk about is, if I can get my mouse to respond here, is in-country spending. And this is a relatively new request module that we created last year. And it's structured on a quarterly basis. And David, it might be good for you to talk about this from a functional standpoint. Like, are people required to do this every quarter, or is it just as you have submissions? I actually don't know that. So
yes,
but I'll go ahead and click on this so you can see the form as David's talking.
Yes, it is. We want this reported quarterly, and you can see after you select the quarter, the last checkbox at the bottom is nothing to report this quarter, sorry. So if there were no spending in any of the countries, then just click that one. But if you had spending in multiple countries, check the box of each country you spent in and then the amount. This is important, and we do report this to USAID Washington each quarter. And we have been asked before, why is there no spending reported in a certain country when I know there has been activity? So please fill this out. I will note that some projects have brought their financial officer into this so that we can set up an account. And if this is your case, please send me the name and the email of your financial officer, and we can send the reminder email each quarter to that person, and that person can log in and report if you prefer. And that's, and there will be separate, as Doreen presented at the global convening, there'll be a separate module on host country spending, and we will inform you of when that change, when that's available, when that module is available.
Okay.
So,
And, oh, go ahead.
no, that's all on host country.
Okay. And as you'll see, this request module is pretty simple. It's not asking for a ton of information, so pretty nice that way. I will go ahead and cancel this. And the last thing I want to mention in terms of request modules is actually a module that you do not see yet because we are about to release it, but it is going to be called the annual plan request module, and we'll have it here soon, and it will be due in July. And I don't know if David or Ryan could talk about the functionality of that, because I'll be honest, I haven't looked at it for a couple weeks.
Sure, I can share this.
Sorry about that. I didn't realize I was going to be talking about that one. I would have prepared better.
No worries. Let me share my screen for a second.
Let me stop sharing so that you can, there you go.
I was anticipating finding it. Let me switch back. If I can't find it, we'll just, so essentially it will be the items that the PIs submitted the week prior to the global convening. Let me share this. So it'll be which project is this plan for? And this one, for PIs that are in multiple projects, you have to select which project it is. The travel plans for the upcoming year. So this will be due July 15 and cover the upcoming fiscal year. So October 1 through September 30th the following year. We understand that travel plans will change in the course of 15 months, but this is something that we need to include in our annual plan. And then as John was mentioning, what inputs, pesticides, fertilizers, and seeds are you planning to purchase? And there will be a link here to go to the request module where you will request approval should you anticipate using inputs in the upcoming year. And then we will provide additional information about what needs to be included in the narrative of activities based around the objectives of the project and also a budget for that fiscal year. And that, again, will be in the future under the request module. So I will stop the share so Tara can resume sharing, but we were planning to take a pause here just to make sure that we were covering everyone's questions. So please submit a question using the Q&A feature or the chat. I do see somebody has raised their hand.
Yeah, there's a Q&A.
So under Q&A, there are some questions about, is this the total, referring to in-country spending, is this the total amount per quarter that we report? Yes, the total amount of spending per quarter per country. And the question noted that we do have a sub-award. And I'm going to follow up on this question in further detail with our financial officer, Doreen, and to make sure that we answer this question correctly. In-country costs, yes, okay. So those are the two outstanding questions. Let me check the chat to see if we have. I don't see anything. All right, let me stop the share. And all right, since I don't see any other additional questions, and Doreen is indicating that you can send specific questions about your subaward to her, and that would be the best way to handle that, to address the questions on in-country spending. See additional questions. One more. And Doreen is clarifying that subawards are included in in-country spending. So Tara, why don't we go back to you and continue with the impact modules.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Oh, and just one note before, yeah, as you're sharing your screen. So for impact modules, and this was a question raised at the global convening, if projects do not yet have their contract in place or their subaward, we realize that we are requesting that you go through the modules that you will now see and you mark them as complete. Some of them you will have nothing to report. There are others that we do want you to submit, such as background and demographics, the project overview, project researchers, and project progress. And on project progress module, you will notice that there's a lessons learned and issues or concerns section. This is an opportunity for you to share lessons that might be helpful for others, or to communicate with us at the management office, issues or concerns that you have, and this could include during the proposal process, or during contracting, or during the opening meeting that we had at the global convening. This is a great way to mention things. And we have one question regarding travel requests. This is made by each project member, PI or the co-PI. Co-PIs, thank you for asking this question. Co-PIs do submit their international travel requests, and we anticipate adding a question that you'll have to check yes or no. That does the PI, the lead PI, know that you are requesting this travel, just to make sure that the PIs are informed, or it's part of your annual plan, that trip. I think that covers it. Tara, do you want to continue?
Yeah. Make sure can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd already started sharing my screen and it wouldn't let me see if I was muted or not. Okay, so I'm back in the system, but this time I am emulating David, and I'm doing so because he's tied to a test project, so it'll be good for part of the demonstration purposes of what a completed module looks like. So we're going to discuss impact modules here, which is going to be the key part of the system for most people. This is going to be for the semi-annual report, but this reporting is similar to the annual report that's due in September, but I mentioned sessions earlier, and right now we're in the semi-annual session, essentially. So that's the focus of the data collection right now. The way the Piestar system works is that the role that someone has on a project will indicate what modules they're responsible for. And there are cases where different roles actually have all the same modules, but for the most part, different roles will have a different set of modules. So generally speaking, the PI has the most modules to manage. And a co-PI might have several of the key ones, but maybe not all of them. And then someone who has a designation of, for example, researcher or other project contact may only have one or two modules. There may be very little data to actually collect on them. What I've done here in emulating David is part of this is some people will be attached to more than one project, and so they'll actually have to fill out a set of modules per project. And if that's the case, there will be a drop down here under impact modules. When I emulated Zach Smith, there was no drop down because he's only tied to one project. So that's that distinction there. And then I mentioned the dashboard earlier. I'm going to jump back to it. When I was emulating Zach, there was only one project here, and now that I'm emulating David and he's typed to 2, we actually see them broken down here. And just to point out, the way this visual system works is that for each project, it will tell you how many of your total modules do you still need, are completed, or do you still need to complete. And this orange flag here indicates that you're not done. You have things in draft. If module completion were finished, you would have a green check mark. And since the modules have not been reported on, it's actually this orange flag that's kind of telling you, hey, you need to go and report. And it's going to, up here in this total reporting progress, it's going to aggregate those. So if you only have one project, then this will only reflect one project. But if you have 3 projects, then the total reporting progress is actually going to look at all of those projects and tell you, you know, for your overall involvement in Legume, you're only 30% of the way done. And if you wanted to see what does that mean for each project, maybe you finished all of your modules on one project. And so maybe you have a green check mark for the first one listed, but the other 2 you haven't started reporting, then the total reporting progress is only going to show you that you're part of the way there. Now, once we go in to one of these projects, I'll go ahead and do the Legume Systems Lab, Innovation Lab. We have another progress bar, and this one here will be for that project. And in this case, we have one module that's in draft. That means he has started to enter data, but he didn't finish. He saved the form as draft. And so this is here to tell you that, hey, you started, but you didn't finish. And once it is finished, this will change to a green check mark, which we have a little key down here to show you that's what that means. And as you finish your modules for a given project, this status bar will start to fill up. And if you reach 100% on this project, then this will say 100%. However, like I said, if you've only done it for one project and you are on more than one project, then when you go back to the dashboard, you will see that this is not at 100% because you still have other projects to complete. That being said, we'll go back in here to this, the default project is what this is. And I'm going to click on the one that is in draft form. And you can see that he's started to fill out some information, but he didn't finish. And I think for the purposes of demoing, I'm going to go into the test project just because that's a better process to follow. So we'll go ahead and go into international travel plans again. Now this one, he hasn't done anything. So we'll say there's 2 trips and visiting countries. This is a multi-select, so you can go through and click an add, and then we'll do a total budget here. And now I'm going to hit mark as complete. And that mark as complete button ends up being pretty key to how the system works. You can have things in draft and maybe you've entered 15 lines of publications and you haven't hit mark as complete. If you haven't hit mark as complete, then the system thinks you're not done yet. So you'll see that when I did that, this changed to a green check mark, and the goal is to get all of these to have a green check mark. And now we're at 6% complete progress. And just to do that demoing, I'm going to go back to the dashboard, and you'll see that total reporting progress is only 3% because it is taking both of these projects into account. And now we see this has changed to a 1, and if we want to do some more reporting, we can go into the modules and do that. Now, David wanted me to specifically talk about some of these modules, and so the key ones, background and demographics is pretty straightforward. This is where the data collection happens. So again, your profile does not forward into this. You have to do it separately. Now, if you're on a project for 5 years, it turns out you only have to do this once. And at the end of the annual reporting, we will copy certain modules forward because we assume the data has not changed. And the background and demographics module is going to be one of those. So that in the future, all you will have to do is go into here in case anything changes, and then update and mark as complete in future years. But the information you fill out on the first go around will actually auto-populate in future reporting periods. So we'll go ahead and fill in some test data here. And I'm going to skip a field so that you can see what happens when you do that. Oh, you don't live in Kansas, you live in Michigan, right? I'm going to do whatever here. Don't know if I need to have that formatting or if this is just the suggestion for readability, but let's see what happens when I hit mark as complete. Unable to save due to missing or invalid data. Fix the highlighted errors. So as you can see, this is going to tell you in the red exactly where you need to go so that you don't have to hunt for it. And MHK is the abbreviation for Manhattan, Kansas, which is where Ryan and I live, so that's what that is. And it looks like the phone is not going to squawk at me, but I'll go ahead and do the. Okay, so now when I hit mark as complete, it is celebrating the module is marked as complete. We see the green check mark and the progress is updated. So it's pretty nice from a visual, from a user standpoint visually. Some of the other modules are going to be project overview. We'll just go ahead and click on this. A lot of this information you'll see is grayed out. You can't actually edit that because it has been set at the project level. This is just so you can see what has been entered. So if you see something and you think, well, that doesn't look right, then reach out to David and have a discussion about whether any details need to be adjusted on the project side of things. So what you'll be doing is you'll be doing the country edition, and then you can add your districts and then provide an executive summary. And again, for test purposes, we'll go ahead and do that, and we will mark as complete. So you get that sense of satisfaction as you go through the modules. Project researchers is going to be another one. And this one's going to be that table setup. So the way the module is constructed is a little different. It's not just a straight form. You're going to have a table where you add rows, and when you click add, you will get a form and you will fill out that information. Now, you will have the opportunity to add several lines here. And let's say you add 3 and you know you still need to add 2 more, then you don't have to mark as complete until you're done. But I will say about the project researchers module, do you see this blue box here with information? When you click mark as complete, an account will automatically be automatically created for each project researchers reported. In addition, each individual will receive a welcome email with a link to log into the system. The way this module is working, you can add as many people as you want, but they will not get that welcome email until you hit mark as complete. And that is sometimes not clear for people using this module. They might say, well, I added 10 people. What do you mean they didn't get the email? Well, it's because mark as complete was not clicked. So what you'll want to do is, if you want these individuals to get that email and get in the system and start reporting, go ahead and mark as complete, even if you don't have everybody in there, and you know that you'll be going back in later once you get the additional researchers, and you can always add them later. So, but if you want to wait until you have everyone, you can do that. That's going to be your process. But just know that if you haven't clicked mark as complete, they will not get that email. So we'll go ahead and click on add. And this is where you can, let's see, if you search, you get the autofill and you can add people who are already in the system. And if you do it, if that's the case, they will not get a welcome email. They'll just have another drop down in their impact modules. And reporting responsibility, that's a good one to mention, is if you click no, they will not be assigned any modules. If you click yes, then they will get the default assignment of modules and have something to report on. So David, do you want to add anything to the discussion for this module, or do you think that's pretty straightforward?
That's good.
Oh, there's also final year. The question here being, is this the final year the project researcher will work on the project? And again, this ties into whether they get copied forward. If you say it is their final year, then they won't get added to future sessions. But if you say no, that means they're going to continue on in the future. So it's kind of some, and I'm not going to fill this out. I'm going to just go click to project progress, which is the next module. And this is tied to the annual report. And what we do is we actually, you get a chance to put in your semi-annual achievements. And then when we do the annual reporting session later in the year, you will actually get to see as a read-only what you entered in the semi-annual. So for this round, you are entering stuff, and then you're hitting submit, and the data is being captured. And then when the next session gets open, you'll go in and this will now say annual achievements, and the months will be different. And you'll have a chance to fill this out again, but you'll get to see in a read-only what you wrote just now. So you'll get to refer back to the data you entered 6 months prior. And institutional capacity development, these are some of the questions that are being asked. And we'll go ahead and mark this. And there is a character limit. You'll see over there that 30 out of 2,000. I've put 30 characters into this box. I can do up to 2,000 characters. So you'll want to make sure you don't have a lot more text than you're allowed to enter. We've got the module complete. Next is AOP progress. And this is the one that ties back to something I mentioned early on, which is objectives. And the objectives, again, are entered at the project level by David, or Ryan or I can do it as well, but David will probably be managing that. He's been on top of that so far. And if he has 3 objectives for a project, then you will see them here and you can report against them in this module. So if I click on this, and again, we're in the dummy project, so it's a little hard to, this may make more sense when you go into your own module with a real objective, but basically we're wanting to know, did you make progress? And you can choose yes, no, or no progress expected. And if you choose yes, these fields for data capture are going to change. You'll notice that you've got these grayed out buttons here. This is a rich text editor. And Ryan, why can't I in here?
Are you not able to hit the buttons up there?
No, not for the objective progress. I can for the challenges. I don't know why.
That's interesting. We'll take a look at that and see what's going on.
Oh, apparently I can if the answer is no, but not if the answer is yes. So,
Well, they're different fields.
yeah, sorry everyone. I didn't expect to not be able to click in there. It might. Yeah, we'll take a look at that. But anyway, the point I wanted to make with this bar here is I can bold things, add a list. You have more versatility with what you can enter from a display standpoint. You can link to things, you can add an image, you can upload a file. So that's all pretty cool to beef up your reporting there. And then there's this section here, changes or updates. Did the objective change? And you can here. And I'm gonna see what happens when I click save. Yeah, so we need to let's look at this because I cannot go in there. Well, I guess if I change to no, it'll let me. So anyway, we'll take a look at that there. And now I have added progress against the objective. I still have to mark as complete to get the green check mark.
Tara, just to highlight there, this is one area where please, the PIs, if they could go to this AOP progress, we've added the objectives specific to your projects that you included in your proposals. And please review those and make sure that all the objectives are there. We also will be reaching out to you in the future regarding with the measurement, the resilience measurement team. But this is one place where we would appreciate the PIs to make sure that we've included all of the objectives, and you can see those in that AOP progress module. And then one other quick note from a question that came in, if a co-PI is going to be doing the reporting, you can communicate that to us and we can give you the reporting responsibilities of the PI if the PI is designating somebody else to take care of the reporting. And then, John?
Yeah, and then you don't have to back up, Tara, but I just wanted to say in relation to the challenges and the lessons learned, there are record retention requirements for us as a project. So we know that you probably will be anyway, but just a reminder to be somewhat delicate about the way you state those because that information is not entirely confidential. We do keep it here internally to the lab, but there are several people who have access to it. So as you write those up, be careful about naming names and providing other perhaps private or confidential information that you wouldn't want other eyes to see.
Okay, so moving on, publications and presentations. I'm not sure how much you wanted me to talk about this one, but this is also, we've got a table view and you can add as many entries as you need to. We do have an import publications and export publications feature here. So let's say you've entered 10 publications and you want to export that data out for other purposes. Then you would click the export publications button. I'm not going to click it because I don't have any entries. And the other feature is, let's say you have a list of publications in a BibTeX format or a PubMed format. You can actually import those here so that you don't have to do your manual entry. So we've got an upload button for each of those. And so, like I said, if you're already sitting on a list of publications and you want a quick, easy zip it into the system option, then you've got these options here. As far as the actual form, we'll go ahead and click add. You will get to choose your publication type. And based on what type you choose, you will have different fields. And again, we'll have that validation. If you try to save and you haven't filled out all the fields, you will be asked to go in and address the fields you missed. Again, we've got the add button for people, which is authors in this case, and the add button is again off to the right, so don't miss that. And you have the option to upload files. If your publication is available as a PDF file, then you can add it here. And you do have the save draft option, so I'm going to go ahead and click a few things. And I'm going to hit save draft. Oh, that's right. Chapter title. I thought I was filling out the title field. You have to have a title in order to save this as a draft. Normally you can save as a draft and just have a few fields selected, and it's not going to tell you any of them are required to save a draft except for the title on a publication or presentation, because how would you reference it if you didn't have a title in there? So you do need to have that field filled out in order to save the draft. And anything else, it doesn't matter if you've done it or not, but you have to have a title. So now you can see this is in draft form, and it will say it's in draft form, and I will have the option to go back in and edit that and fill it out completely. And you'll also notice that this module is now as a draft. Okay, so you've got this again, quick glance on the left. What do I still need to do for this project? Well, I've got some orange flags and I've got things that I haven't even started. So that's that. David, do you want to add anything to this module? Anything people need to keep in mind?
Nope, that's good.
Okay, moving on to project photos. This one's pretty straightforward. You can add photos. I do know that there's some guidance that Jan would have given you about tagging. So keep that in mind as you do this. But again, you're going to add, you can upload files. Now, when you write your title, let me take a step back. Upload files, you can add more than one photo here. So your title, if you are adding a list of photos, would, I believe, want to capture that. Maybe you have 5 photos of a warehouse and you're wanting to capture the different angles within the warehouse, then maybe you would title it like that. And then keywords is going to be, I said tags, I meant keywords. Your ability to attach keywords to the project photos that are entered in your entry. Again, we have an add button for people, which is photo credit, and it's over here to the right. And you know, it's pretty straightforward. So I'm not going to try and do a demo there, but I'm going to click continue on to data management and data catalog. We're actually having a discussion with the management entity team about the fact we probably don't need both of these. They kind of have the same intent. So I think we're going to be removing data catalog. So as a PI, you can expect to only see one of these in the future, and my guess is it's going to be data management. Again, we've got the ability to add multiple rows, and as you add rows, you will have a form and you get to add information, and this is going to be focusing on the data sets. And you've got some checkboxes down here. Make sure you read everything. And as you add entries, you will have this in draft form until you hit mark as complete. Okay. And David, if you want to add anything, just jump in. And let's see. We're at EMMP is where you report mitigation and monitoring, and additional instructions will be provided by the management office. So I'm not sure that I need to talk about this one in detail, but I will go ahead and click add, and you will see what this form looks like. And you're going to have these radio buttons, which you cannot multi-select. So as you select one, you will see the choose action drop down, and that will give you more options to fill out. So there's dependencies in this form is what I'm getting at. Supporting documents is, save that. Supporting documents, this is where you can add additional files if you have them and you don't know where to put them, okay? And there's some text here for you to read before you do that. And again, until you hit mark as complete, the module will not have a green check mark. Okay, now we're moving on to the indicator modules, and these are going to be where we talked about adding targets earlier in the talk. This is where you're going to meet up with those again. So we've got the indicator modules for Feed the Future Innovation Labs. We've got degree granting training, technologies, practices, and approaches, and then something called target numbers, which is again that of we'll click on it and when we get to it. But degree granting training, if you click the add button, this is functioning like the other modules. Ryan, can you jump in about is the indicators only on the target numbers module?
What do you mean?
When we talk about, when we reconcile with what we looked at the project level?
Well, yeah, the indicator modules are the only ones that show up for target numbers.
Okay.
Is that your question?
Not entirely. What do I need to cover in degree granting training and technologies, practices, and approaches that have to do with those indicators? Or is this just you're filling out the fields and you need to click mark as complete?
Yeah, so basically you're going to be filling out these fields for each training and each technology, practice, and approach you have. And then the different disaggregations used by those target numbers, those are going to actually be pulled from the entries that you give us. So Tara, if you go to like degree granting training, the target numbers will be mainly looking at a couple different fields in here, but we want to collect the whole information about this training in case we need to go back and reference it later. But as far as the target numbers are concerned, if you scroll up to the top, we'll be doing disaggregations based off of things like how many males were trained this year versus how many females are trained this year, things like that. And in technologies, it'll be like what phase of technologies did we have?
Sorry. Sorry, I'm jumping around, everybody. Is it here?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you report 4 technologies, and of those 4, 3 of them are in phase 2 and 1 of them is in phase 3, then you'll be able to see that in those target numbers.
Okay. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to demo that without having this all filled out, I think is where I was getting stuck. But let me go ahead and save this as a draft. Oh. So basically what he's saying is as you get these entries for, in this case, technologies, let's say we had gotten to the point where we had 4 of them and they were in different phases, and then we hit mark as complete once we were able. And let's say we had done the same with degree granting training, which I do want to point out, you have the option to mark as complete with nothing to report. Let's say there are no degree granting trainings that happen. So we can go ahead and do that. And that will mark the module as complete. Now, when we go into this target numbers, this module is a little different than other modules. There is no form to fill out. What you have to do is actually confirm your target numbers by clicking this box. But we don't want you to do that until you actually confirm your target numbers. And the way to do that is to click there. And it takes you back to what we looked at earlier under the Projects tab. And you can go ahead, and this is where you get to, well, this is 2020, but there we go. Under phase 2 field testing, you did see that I entered 1 and the target should have been 3. And because there is a discrepancy of more than I can't remember what the percent, I think it's 10%, then it is going to request a deviation narrative. Why is there a deviation? And David, is this where you want them entering targets for the future, or do you want them to have done that ahead of time?
Yeah, so this will be in the annual reporting, and we will want, you'll have the opportunity to update the target numbers for the future years, and we do want you to update those each September. In this case, you will have the opportunity right now to adjust the current target numbers because it's the first time. But in the future, that section you will not be able to change. And as Tara demonstrated, the actual comes in from what was reported. So this would be a good indication if you only see 2 technologies there and you know there were 4. You'll know you have to go back to the module to report those.
Okay. So I have saved this, and now I'm going to go back to my impact modules. I'm going to go to target numbers, and I have confirmed them. So I will mark this as confirmed, and then I will hit mark as complete, and my module is now complete. Jumping now down to custom indicator modules, there are 2 of them, one being short-term training. This is where you can enter those short-term training Events, again, it's a table with an add button, and there is, I believe there's some validation logic in here where I know it's the case for other labs. I'm not sure if it is for Legume, but if you get an error where it says your numbers don't match, then it might be because you put in 34 total attendees and then you put in 12 male and 10 female, and it says 12 plus 10 does not equal 34. So you'll want to check your math if you get that kind of error. And then, sorry. Excuse me. The quarterly international travel plans, which we actually clicked in earlier, there's a note here that the management entity is planning to update the questions in this module. So just be aware of that. Oh, maybe I didn't click on this earlier. This is a form builder module. Okay. David, do you want to talk about this one?
We will use this in the future to update the international travel plans, which are further up on the list. But this is we're still developing this, and but this is it'll look more like a table.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize there were two modules with such a close label, and I'm in the test, so that's why I got confused. Sorry about that. Okay. And the last thing to talk about is going to be the reports that you have access to. And because David has expanded access, I'm actually going to go back to emulating Zach so that you can see what you can see. And 10% progress there, good work. Okay, reports drop down here. You do have that module progress, which I did show you earlier, that actually we entered through the project when we clicked on view individual progress. Another way to get to that same page is to click on the module progress in the reports dropdown, and this will give you your visual display of how much progress has been made on the project. And the other report is data summary. And this will give you access to viewing the data collected on your project. So in this case, it's the climate resilient cowpeas. I'm not going to drill down because I don't know if you guys are allowed to see cross project. So maybe I will go back to David's test project. Data summary, and I am going to do the data summary for the Legume test project. So this is some of that dummy data I was just entering. And what you'll be able to see is what was collected in year 1, what was collected in year 2, and as we move forward in time, you'll see more columns in this. If you double click on a number, which in that case it was 2 records, it will drill down to the background and demographic summary for that project for that year. And you'll be able to expand and view data this way. And if you click printer friendly view, then you can print what you're looking at. Ryan, is there anything additional I should cover on this? Because again, I'm not sure as far as permissions, what a PI is going to be able to click on in the drop downs.
No, I think you pretty much covered the basics for now.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, when I change who I'm emulating, I change what can be seen, so. But I don't want to be in Zach's account showing off things that shouldn't be shown, so we'll keep it simple like that. So, and then the final thing, I was going to save it for the end, but it turns out I already talked about it, but it was this dashboard here. I think we've already covered what is on the dashboard, and there is going to be some variation based on who you are, because David has more permissions. He's got a few more things on his dashboard, but I think what we covered for Zach's view is sufficient for what PIs will see. David, John, is there anything you want to add or anything the users want to drill down in terms of what's being collected in the impact modules?
No, just to highlight once again, to please submit in for the semi-annual report. The due date is the 16th. We realize most of these will just be marking as complete with nothing to report, but this will provide, for example, the project researchers and the research location will be in place for the some of those things that are needed for the annual report. I don't see any questions from our attendees. If anyone does have a question, please submit that. Oh, I do see a question. We'll wait for it.
Yeah, there's one.
So a question about the recording. Yes, we are going to make this recording of this webinar available as soon as possible. We also plan to put together a frequently asked questions based on the questions we received and any other we receive from you in the future. So don't be hesitant to send emails. And there's also a question about the IRB requirements for field surveys and entering that. Currently, that's captured in the EMMP module, but we will follow up with you as that's not, that there may be changes to that, and we will follow up with further guidance on the IRB process, the internal review board process.
Just a brief word about that. This is John again. Usually the IRB is institution specific. In other words, we as a lab don't issue IRBs. You have to seek that from your home institution. We can probably give you some thoughts and guidance on that, but nevertheless, so we do not issue IRBs.
Are there any other questions?
All right, well, thanks everyone. We appreciate your attendance today. As David had mentioned, the questions and answers to today's webinar will be available as an FAQ document very soon. And we will also share the link to the recording of the webinar as soon as we have that as well. And again, thank you for joining us, and we wish you the best of luck in your research. And I just want to conclude the webinar and turn it back over to John for some closing remarks.
Once again, thank you, everyone. This is very important for us as a lab, and so we really appreciate your cooperation. Thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to be with us today. Also, we want to, of course, thank USAID for the support they've given to the lab, and we want to thank Piestar, Tara, and Ryan. Thank you very much for leading this discussion today, and we wish all of you a wonderful weekend.